My name is Norma Sahakian and I am the Executive Director for the Bureau of Streetlighting. I am so excited to talk to you today about this exciting program. Today we will cover details about the program, funding and pricing, branding, and lessons learned. But before we get started, I would like to ask you to watch a video with Mayor Garcetti on the program itself.
So you come to the charger, you take the fob right here, and it's unlocked. You take it right over to the car, and boom. Go do your errand, have some fun. Your car's charging, and it's going to be ready by the time you get out.
When I had the Fiat 500e, I had a lot of range anxiety. Multiple times I was driving with 0 miles estimated remaining, and I was like, well, what happens? Like, am I gonna have to get this car towed? If charging stations were on every corner, it would just make it more convenient for people to own electric cars, and it would make my life better.
Access to charging is everything. If we want our buses to be electric, our cars to be electric, our trucks to be electric, we got to find a place to charge. We already have these wired. They're ready to charge cars without having to put a lot of work into them. Cars, 94% of the time, aren't moving. Shouldn't you be putting fuel in them when you're not moving? When you're running an errand, when you're at class, when you're at home? That's the idea behind this. You got buses that are electric now. You have heavy equipment that's in ports that are 100% electric. The revolution's coming. I think there will be a day in which the gas car will be a collector's edition, but the standard car will be an EV. Gas cars are bad for our planet, and we can see it from the record temperatures around this globe. This is the challenge of our generation, of our time, to see whether we can transform the way we move, the way we live, and the way we consume to make sure this planet can sustain life for our children and our children's children. Don't you want to be at the cutting edge? Don't you want to lead? Don't you want to be the first? Or do you want to be a follower? The choice is yours.
I would like to start by giving you some information about the City of LA and its street lighting system. Los Angeles has a population of over 4 million people with over 50 million visitors annually. The Bureau of Street Lighting was established in 1925 and is one of 5 bureaus within Public Works. Street lighting in the city is funded through assessments billed to property owners for the maintenance and operation of the system. The first streetlights were installed in 1860 with gas lamps. We have a rich history that is told by our streetlights, from ornamental poles installed in the early 1900s, modern streetlights starting in the 1950s, and now we are back to pedestrian scale poles that reflect our focus on walkability. This year we put out a streetlight design contest looking for a design for a basic LA unique streetlight. There is another session in this webinar that covers that contest and the winning design, so please go look for that. Now the city system has over 223,000 streetlights with over 400 different designs. Due to the age of the system, the proliferation of designs has grown over time. The system covers over 4,500 miles of streets that equate to about 2/3 of the city. Now starting in 2009, the City of LA took on an enormous LED conversion program that has resulted in approximately 90% of our system converted. This is important because it reduced the energy consumed that allowed for the accommodation of other attachments. The city's streetlight system is billed by time of use and not per fixture, as is set in a lot of other cities. This was changed during the time of our LED conversion program. Our system also has no meters. We basically report the usage to our utility. Now a little bit about EV chargers on streetlights. In 2016, the mayor released the city's Green New Deal, which had a goal to increase the percentage of electric and zero-emission vehicles in the city. In order to do this, the city had to invest in the infrastructure to charge these vehicles. This was an attempt to reduce range anxiety. The best option was to provide EV chargers curbside. Due to the reduction of energy on the streetlight system from the city's LED conversion program, this provided an opportunity to attach our EV chargers. This was the best economical decision since the electrical infrastructure was already in place. There would be no need to break the sidewalk, to bring new wires, install a meter, or increase items on an already crowded sidewalk. Since the inception of our program, the city has conducted testing and evaluation on various EV chargers. We are currently working with 3 EV manufacturers. Now to date, we have 432 level 2 EV chargers attached to our streetlights. The map to the left gives you a visual representation of what that looks like. We have tried to make sure we distribute these equally throughout the city. Each station has an internal meter that has been accepted by our utility to report energy usage. Now the city is charging $2 to $3 per hour for a charge. This was set up originally to make it simple for the user. This may change due to current state trends to charge by kilowatt hour. To date, we have seen over 81,000 charging sessions. And as I mentioned, we are working with 3 EV charging vendors: ChargePoint, CMI, who works under Greenlots, and Flow. Now to the left of this, you can see a graph of how it has risen. The charging sessions over time has risen due to the increased number of chargers that we have deployed. Now I want to cover a little more detail on these attachments. Our streetlight system is a 120/240 system that has 2 hots and 1 neutral. We don't have a ground wire, but use the galvanized steel conduit as our ground and have a grounding rod every 500 feet. This is a bit different than other cities, but is required to allow a level 2 charger to attach. The stations are required to measure electricity usage with a 0.5% accuracy. We ask that all stations have some sort of cord management. We don't want cords on the floor. Now most of them have a pulley system, but we've also attached some with retractable cords. Now the pulley system exposes the cord, but the retractable system can become a maintenance problem. We have had problems with the motor of the systems. Now it's important to make sure that all of your EV charging stations are durable for outdoor locations. Not all of them are marked this way. Also, even when they say they are durable, use your own judgment on what your city needs. We had one with a non-metal face that was continually being pulled out. We then had to require that the face of the units were made with durable metals. Now, vandalism has always been an issue for us, more so in the beginning of the program, but now these incidents seem to be dwindling. So be aware of your vulnerable points. Sometimes on the charging stations, the screens can be your vulnerable point. Make sure you can see them in direct sunlight. Be aware of your cord management and how you want it to be deployed, and any other moving parts with the EV charging systems that you choose. Now, I think it's important to cover a bit on the funding, pricing, and expenses of the program. Project funding can come from different places. We used a combination of grants from the state's MSRC, Mobile Surface Area Air Pollution Reduction Committee, and utility rebates from our utility, the Department of Water and Power. This helped to fund the program. Also, working with your utility, you may be able to use low carbon credits to get funding for other expenses. Now, there's always city funding, but that has made up a very small amount of our program. And there's also potential advertising opportunities, which is something we have not used at this point. Now, as I mentioned, we are charging $2 to $3 per hour. but are in discussions to change that to kilowatt hours to line up with current standards. Now, a little bit on expenses. This is something you need to make sure you plan for your program. You're not just going to put them out and then forget about them. Maintenance is important and will be an expense, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a separate slide. Annual communication costs that will send you information on the system's operation and energy usage should be considered. Now, we bundled 5 years of this cost into the purchase price, which might be an option for you. Now, energy costs needs definitely to be considered, and probably you should make sure that the fees you charge your users can cover that cost. Also, you may have some parking offset costs to consider. These stations take away a regular parking spot, and in some parts of the city, this may be an issue. We have factored in a parking surcharge for our transportation department for those locations that had parking meters that were removed. Now, to the right of this slide is a picture of a co-location pole that houses communication equipment. This is our co-location program that we are working with our communication partners. There is a session as part of this webinar that covers this program, and I would recommend that you go see it. Now, for a little bit on branding. If you're going to implement this program, you need to have a plan for branding or some way to get the word out of where they are. Most people will not even see them due to the jungle of items in the city. For the City of LA, we have adopted a medallion attached to the pole, and you can see that new design in the picture to the right. Also, we are going to paint the curb color as well as the pole green to get everyone's attention. Finally, we'll put a marker on the street that designates the location is for EV cars only. These efforts will help to make your program successful. Second, you need to consider notification measures. We use various means of social media to announce a new charger, and are going to start a program that will send mailers to residents within a half-mile of the location of a new charger. Now, you can see what that notification is going to look like at the top left. Finally, make sure your chargers occupy a digital space that designates location. We put all of our charges into PlugShare and on the city's website. Now, I want to talk a little bit about lessons learned. As I mentioned earlier, it's important to have a means of maintenance for these stations. Either you can have your crews trained or have a contract in place. These stations will need to be maintained. Sometimes they just need a reset or a part replaced. We have crews that maintain our streetlight system that have been trained in light EV charger maintenance. We also put a contract in place for those stations that need extensive work. Remember to stock parts because sometimes that is an easy fix. Also, have some office staff assigned to take calls, work with your vendors, or dispatch crews. All these measures are important to have a healthy EV charging system. The last thing you want is broken units that just make people angry. Finally, if you're going to start this program, you should look into your current local parking ordinances. The state has an ordinance for non-EV cars that park in these spots on private property, but not in the public right-of-way. We have had to put in place local ordinances to cover these situations. Also, it's important to work with your traffic officers on the signage and how the locations will look. They will need to ticket these violators and then defend the tickets when challenged, so don't forget to consult with them. Finally, the last lesson learned is community education. We have not had too many complaints, but then we have put these in locations mostly on arterial streets. We have not ventured too much into residential streets. This may be an issue, and it's important to educate the public and send out information and mailers. Now, I have one slide on the impact of COVID-19, since the pandemic has touched every part of our lives. With the onset of the pandemic and economic upheaval, the Bureau worked with our utility to provide free charging at our stations. The utility is using low-carbon fuel credits to cover the cost. We have seen a continued use of our chargers during these times, but the usage has shifted from evenings to daytime. Of course, this makes sense, since those that would charge at the workplace or in the evenings are now charging from home. We have not decided how long the free charging will continue, but have received some happy emails from residents already in a stressful situation. Now, I want to show you a few pictures of our charging stations. Starting from left to right, we have a CMI Greenlots charger. In the middle is a Flow, and to the right is ChargePoint. As you can see, the left charger is mounted high up on the pole as an attempt to protect it from vandalism. This is the one with the retractable cord. and when they were mounted low, many were damaged due to people pulling on the cord. Now, the ones that are lit high on the pole, once somebody initiates a session on their iPhone, the cord will automatically lower. Program and let you know that we feel this deployment is very successful. We continue to see high usage and high demand. We have seen over a total of over 81,000 charging sessions since the inception of the program, and on average over 30,000 charging sessions annually. Now the sessions seem to grow as we deploy more every year. To the left you can see a map of usage that is used to see which chargers are getting the most usage. The darker the color, the more the charger is getting used. This is an important tool to use to see where more chargers are needed and potentially relocate a charger to a more desirable location. Also, with the onset of COVID, we've implemented free EV charging. This change has been met with great support from our utility, the Department of Water and Power, and our EV partners. I want to thank them both for that support. Finally, the City of LA has put our EV chargers into the city's demand response program. This means that when there is exceptionally high demand of the city's electrical infrastructure, such as during a heat wave, we will turn off our chargers. I see this as a success of the flexibility and remote operations of these units. This concludes my presentation, and I hope this provides you with some interesting information. We are very excited about this program and plan to continue deployments each year. Remember to stay tuned and watch a 3-minute video from Montreal and Seattle that will tell you about their program. Also, in this webinar, there are a lot of other exciting sessions, such as a virtual tour of our museum and our Smart City program. So I encourage you to go and visit those sessions. Thank you very much for joining us today for the first LA Smart City Streetlight Conference.
Why, hello friends. This is Michael Samulon, Manager of Transportation Electrification Efforts here in Mayor Garcetti's Sustainability Office. It's a pleasure to be with you today. So before jumping into the deep end here of transportation electrification, I wanted to talk a little bit about the overall work that the Sustainability Office does here. And really that's rooted in the sustainability plan that Mayor Garcetti released in 2015. That product really paved the way for the work we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years. It touches on sort of all the topics you might imagine within the world of sustainability, the environment, environmental justice, and it's led to what we put out last year, which was a big 4-year update, LA's Green New Deal. And LA's Green New Deal is a special product. It is a Paris-compliant sustainability plan. So that means it takes the city's goals and ensures that all of them are going to get us as a city to reach the Paris Climate Agreement's agreed upon goals. So that's the product that we're now working with. That's our sort of North Star, and provides us the initiatives and the targets and the milestones that our team works on every day. So at the heart of LA's Green New Deal is the 5 zeros. Zero carbon grid, zero carbon building, zero carbon transportation, zero waste, and zero wasted water. Those are the framework around which all of our efforts revolve. And I'm going to focus on zero carbon transportation because that's where I live every day. And that really leads me to zero emission public transportation, something the mayor has taken a leadership role on for quite a while here, and which is just starting to pay dividends in terms of buses being delivered. So in 2017, both LA Metro and LA DOT made commitments to be zero emission across their whole fleets by 2030. In the interim, the Los Angeles Department of Transportation has made a commitment to accelerate that by 2 years, and they are going to be fully electric by 2028 in time for the Olympics. The other important piece of transportation electrification, of course, is infrastructure, and this is an area where the city has been able to make quite a lot of progress. So like I said before, we are really focused on leading by example. We have installed a lot of EV chargers in our city facilities. Those are for our fleets, those are for staff. We also have many public lots, and we've been installing chargers there. For example, we have chargers in many of our libraries, We have chargers at LAX. We have chargers in many LA DOT public parking lots. And of course, what we all came to talk about today as part of this conference, the Bureau of Street Lighting's curbside streetlight chargers. Another great zero-emission public transportation project we're working on is the Blue LA program. This is a low-income EV car share program, and it came about as a result of a grant that the city won from the California Air Resources Board. We're in the very final stages of finishing phase one, the phase one deployment, which has 40 stations. Each of those stations have 5 chargers, and we have around 100 vehicles that are in use now. Really getting a tremendous amount of use from our low-income residents who live around these charging stations. The Bureau of Street Lighting's curbside EV charger program is a perfect example of how something can go from a pilot to a program. In 2014 or early 2015, they said, hey, we're going to put a charger on a streetlight, and we said, great, and they tried it, and it turns out it worked. So here we are, over 400 of them later, with another 150 scheduled for this year. You're going to hear a lot more about it from other speakers, but it is a great example of where the city can come in and fill a gap that's not being filled by the private sector. So we're able to install chargers in a lot of places that we were not seeing them being installed by some of the traditional charging companies. So this is really a perfect example of how the city is here to help its residents. Here's a piece of infrastructure, it's an asset, it's an amenity, it's something needed, and it's not being provided everywhere. There's a problem there, and we are able to come in and help with that. So huge hat off to the Bureau of Street Lighting for really being at the vanguard with this program, something that other cities come to us and talk about. They all want to know, hey Norma, hey Ed, how did this work? How did you do it? And it's exciting that that leadership continues there, and they're looking at other products to bring to this space. It's been a pleasure being able to come to you virtually today, and I'm sure you won't notice any cuts in this video. It's going to seem completely natural, and I look forward to seeing you all in electric vehicles, on electric buses, on other e-mobility, and getting around the city in some kind of a zero emission, zero carbon transportation. Thank you.
Ce que j'aime d'un véhicule électrique à Montréal, c'est que c'est silencieux, ça émet pas de gaz à effet de serre. Donc, pour ce qui est de la pollution en ville, c'est zéro émission. C'est merveilleux. En fait, je travaille sur un projet qui est vraiment structurant pour la Ville de Montréal, c'est le déploiement des bornes de recharge pour véhicules électriques. En 2016, la stratégie d'électrification des transports a défini un objectif qui était de 1000 bornes de recharge d'ici l'horizon 2020. Je travaille avec des ingénieurs, des agents techniques qui m'aident à mieux cibler les endroits où on va implanter des bornes de recharge.
On est une assez grosse équipe. En fait, on a une équipe qui est plus du côté déploiement et une équipe qui est plus sur le niveau de la maintenance. Je travaille en collaboration avec Hydro-Québec et notre équipe de maintenance, ainsi que la plateforme Circuit électrique, avec les utilisateurs qui nous donnent leurs commentaires sur les bornes. Donc, tout ensemble, on a un genre de partenaire et de façon quotidienne, on se parle de façon à maintenir les bornes dans une condition d'opération parfaite en tout temps. Ce qu'on veut faire, c'est d'avoir un ratio de une borne de recharge pour 10 à 15 utilisateurs de véhicules électriques. Donc, ce ratio-là, c'est à peu près le même qu'on aurait dans les villes de Oslo ou de Bergen en Norvège, qui sont des leaders en termes d'électrification des transports.
En mettant un réseau qui est très fort, donc un réseau qui est disponible au niveau de la recharge, ça peut inciter des gens qui sont sur le point de changer de véhicule d'adopter un véhicule électrique plutôt qu'un véhicule à moteur thermique traditionnel.
Moi, j'ai une voiture électrique. J'ai toujours su qu'un jour dans ma vie, j'allais en avoir une. C'était juste une question de savoir quand. Le réseau de Montréal me convient très, très bien. Je charge en majorité à la maison. J'ai une borne à la maison, mais quand j'ai à me déplacer, que ce soit au centre-ville, dans les quartiers résidentiels, dans les banlieues, je trouve toujours une borne relativement proche d'où est-ce que j'ai à aller. Et je pense que le réseau aujourd'hui a une envergure tout à fait convenable pour tous les propriétaires de l'île de Montréal. Pour recharger une voiture électrique, ça ne peut pas être plus simple que ça. Tu arrives à la station, je sors ma carte du réseau électrique, je tape sur la station, j'ai seulement à brancher le pistolet dans la prise et là, ça me dit combien de temps ça va prendre à peu près pour une recharge complète.
Je dirais qu'à Montréal, il y a plusieurs bornes qui sont dispersées déjà sur le réseau public, puis sont localisées dans des endroits assez judicieux. Alors, par exemple, ici, on a accès à des bornes électriques. Je pense que ce qu'il y a d'important pour une ville comme Montréal, c'est la localisation et aussi la disponibilité du service.
Moi, je recommande à tout le monde de s'acheter une voiture électrique. L'expérience de chargement et l'expérience d'utilisation, elle est vraiment géniale. C'est ce que nos collaborateurs nous disent, nos utilisateurs nous disent que l'expérience, elle est très intéressante.
On planifie le réseau de bornes de recharge de façon à suivre l'évolution du nombre de véhicules à Montréal. Donc, on part de 6 000 et on s'en va vers le 30 000 véhicules en 2025. Donc, le nombre de bornes doit suivre aussi afin de pouvoir desservir tout le monde puis avoir une bonne disponibilité des bornes. Je retire une certaine fierté de voir les véhicules électriques qui se branchent aux bornes de recharge actuellement. Parce que je me dis, bien écoute, j'ai participé à l'implantation de cette borne-là, j'ai participé à l'implantation d'un réseau qui dessert la population et qui est très utile. J'encourage tous les Montréalais automobilistes qui sont sur le point de changer leur véhicule à moteur thermique à adopter un véhicule électrique.
Hi, my name is Andrea Pratt, and I work for the City of Seattle in the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and Environment, and I manage our transportation electrification program, which is known as Drive Clean Seattle. In Seattle, over 62% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation, and Seattle City Light, which is our consumer-owned utility, has carbon-free electricity. So anything we electrify in Seattle is 100% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as well as health-harming tailpipe emissions. So really, electrifying transportation is a key and critical climate strategy for us to meet our 2050 goals of being carbon neutral. In 2016, when Drive Clean Seattle was launched, we partnered with several city departments to move some actions forward, and I'll go through those today. First and foremost, I want to thank the leadership and vision of our utility, Seattle City Light, and also our Department of Transportation. They have been really great partners through this effort. So some of the things that we've done in Seattle, Seattle City Light has committed to installing 20 DC fast chargers for public access. So far, 5 sites have been installed with a total of 12 chargers, and we have 3 more sites pending, which will add an additional 9 chargers in the next 12 months. Seattle City Light also launched a residential charging pilot program where 36 households received basically chargers at their home that was covered, the cost was covered and then billed back to them on their bill. Beyond what our utility has done, our Department of Transportation launched a very innovative pilot permitting program, affectionately known as EV Crow, or EV charging in the right-of-way, which basically permits public charging in right-of-way areas and select areas around the city. Something that else that we did last year was we passed an EV readiness ordinance, which requires any newly constructed parking stalls to be wired up with full 40 amp circuits and provide plugs for charging stations to be installed at a later time. And we anticipate over, that will add thousands of EV access plugs to folks every year. Something else that we have been working on for several years is rapid fleet electrification. And at this point, for the city's fleet, and at this point, most of our passenger sedans are electric, and we've installed over 300 charging stations to that end. So we're really excited about that. We are updating the transportation electrification plan this year, and this plan update will include new 2030 targets for personally owned vehicles, urban goods delivery, and also TNCs and taxis, shared mobility like bikes and scooters. In terms of Seattle's EV market share, we're one of the top markets in the nation for adoption. And in Seattle specifically, as of May 2020, we had nearly 13,000 plug-in electric vehicles registered, and 10,000 of those are full battery electric vehicles. So for new market share, we're hitting between 6 and 10% a month, which is really great. But overall, we're still at only 2% total adoption. So we need to get those numbers up. In terms of advice and lessons learned, Seattle, we have a long history of bold climate action, and we're lucky that we have elected officials that support this work, and also our communities are deeply invested in what we're doing. In terms of lessons learned, I would say it's really crucial to bring an environmental justice lens to any climate work that we do, including transportation electrification. Communities should be involved early and often when we are talking about infrastructure projects. And we should, as policymakers and planners and implementers, really create space in our process for co-creation, including the budget to pay folks to participate, and also find solutions that really work for communities that have been disenfranchised in the past. So happy to follow up with anybody if you have questions. Thank you for allowing us to be here today, and have fun at the conference.